Hello and welcome back. Glad to be with you. Michael Lapid here talking about organizing your corporation. You're newly forming a corporation. This is the second part. And we're talking about issuing shares here. So when you're looking at issuing shares, you have to look at who's getting what shares, how much, and everybody always got questions. How many shares do I get? Nominal amounts are best. What I mean by nominal amount is like 100, 1,000. Easy numbers to calculate percentages based on, because if you go, I want 97 shares and that equals 100% of the company, imagine you're trying to sell 50% of the company. 50% of 97 is, right? It gets very complicated. So your numbers should reflect that. So you want to use things like 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or a million. You want to use easy numbers to calculate percentage. Now, when you're issuing those shares, you're going to do a share certificate. It's going to go in the share register, and that person now has legal ownership, that shareholder has legal ownership of the company through a share certificate. You can actually see the share certificate. It should be written out. You should have a share certificate, because if you've got no proof of the ownership, you might not own it, right? You need proof of that ownership. Now, the corporation is supposed to receive payment for those shares, so that's why we like nominal dollar amounts as well. So a penny, $1 a share, small amounts, so it's easy for you to buy the shares. Because if you say, oh, I want 1,000,000 shares and they're $1, do you have $1,000,000 to put into your company, right? So we want to make sure that we're making them nominal amounts like $1 or a penny, depending on the number of shares, to make it easy to buy your shares, because you must pay for those shares. Okay, that's important. Now, at the end of the day, once we have the shareholders figured out, we're going to want different classes as well. So I'll go back up for a second. Want different classes for spouse members, for spouses, for family members. We want different classes because different classes allow you to split different amounts of dividends. They allow you to do different things in a sale or a restructure. So you always want different classes for different people where possible. And if you're partners with someone, then you probably want the same class and maybe another share of another class too, to distribute the same dividends. Profits are 50-50, for example. But you might go, well, I took the summer off and he needs to take some extra, so that's why you have that extra class. Very complex, something you'd want to speak with us about. Then we look at back to the officers, right? We're appointing the officers and directors. We talked about that in the last video. So making sure that when we do that, we're considering the shareholders can be directors and they can also be officers. So you can be all three, but you may choose not to be. Shareholders will not take any liability, directors will. So you got to consider that in your planning when you're issuing your shares and making your directors, who's taking the liability. Okay, very important. And then the final step to getting that all done now, when you tie all that stuff together, you have your initial meeting like we talked about in the last one. We've now appointed our shareholders, directors, officers, everything set up now. The final step is getting a minute book or all the minutes together in one place. That's a minute book binder typically. You want to make sure you have that. Don't just go to a registry and incorporate and expect it's all going to be done. It's not. If anything, they're going to actually charge you a cheap fee, and then you're going to spend way more fixing it up after and getting your minute book done than if you just did it properly from the beginning. Trust me. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Post in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.